Hi there. We're in Muscatine, Iowa, here to see Ron Paul for President 2012.
Okay, we've got a couple mics. One of them's going to be for the Q session. The other mic is Dr. Paul has it on him. So I'm just going to speak without one. And I think, can you hear me okay in the back? All right, this room works pretty good, I think. Well, my name is Drew Ivers. I live in Webster City and Hamilton County, just about an hour north of Des Moines. I've been involved in Republican politics for a long, long time. I'm currently on the state Central Committee of the Republican Party. And I got to tell you right now, we have ourselves a Republican candidate for president that is historically exceptional. Historically. And as part of that Republican Party process, I'm pleased to be a part of this and let you be engaged in this process. And one of the things is a privilege for me to do is to introduce one of the endorsers of Dr. Paul, and his name is Glenn Massey. And Glenn is a state representative from the southern portion of Des Moines, and they're in Warren County, in that southern part of the Des Moines area. And we've asked Glenn to come and introduce our special guest, of course. So, if you will, I would like to introduce Glenn Massey, the Honorable Representative Glenn Massey.
Thank you, Drew. He gets a big kick out of telling me that I'm the Honorable Glenn Massey. I guess it is a nice title. But I'm going to tell you what, I tell people this is the first job that I worked as hard for that I didn't want. Okay? But I did it because I love my country and I love my state and I want them both back. The best part of this job of being an elected official is that I get to shake hands and sometimes ride airplanes with people like Dr. Paul. Let me tell you, it is the best part of being an elected official is to have fantastic people like this that you get to know at a deeper level. And I'm going to tell you what, we've got a winner this time. You're looking at the next president of the United States. I'll say that is something I learned from Mahatma Gandhi in India. He ran a peaceful revolution. Well, the last campaign, it was the revolution is alive and it continues. It does. Well, Mahatma Gandhi says, well, first they'll ignore you, and then they'll laugh at you, and then they fight with you, and then you win. And Juan's been in this battle a very, very long time, and he has been ignored, and he was laughed at. But you know what? They're fighting with him now. You know what comes next? You win. That's a real reason to be optimistic. Where we just came from in Clinton, it was an overflow crowd. The room would not contain all the people who showed up. It looks pretty good here too. With that, I want to introduce the next president of the United States, Ron Paul.
Thank you very much, and Drew, thank you for being here and that introduction. Glenn, thank you very much. It's great to see everybody, and delighted to have so many people show up. We've been having a very successful day. Scheduled today, this is our third visit. We'll have another one later on in the evening. We had a pretty good day yesterday, too. Most of the time we think of New Jersey and New York as being pretty liberal and not too open to conservative. There was a state senator in New Jersey that had a press conference in endorsement. There were 400 people showed up at the courthouse. And then in New York City, we've had a turnout of 1,400 people. Something special is going on in this country, I think. And I get asked that a lot by the media. They say, what do you think's going on? It's not like it was 4 years ago. You've been doing this for a long time. And they say, we know you don't change your position, so what's happening? I said, well, the country is changing. There's a lot of problems that people are recognizing, and they're deciding that what they're getting isn't exactly what they want. They want something different. Now that is what I'm offering, something different, but it's not strange in a different way. It's really renewal. It's restoring some values that we knew about and that we had. Very simply, I work on the assumption that we got into this mess that we have, and that's the best way I can describe it. It's a big mess. I believe the most important factor in getting us involved in this mess is we've got too many people in Washington not following their oath of office to obey the Constitution. The biggest issue of our day right now for all the candidates to address is that of the economy, that of unemployment. And even those people who are employed, they're not overly confident. 80-something% of the people right now are not satisfied with the government they have in Washington, and I don't blame them because there's some very serious problems there. But the economy is messed up. But it isn't like it just popped up out of the thin air. Many in the past have said that capitalism is a failure, free markets don't work, and that sound money isn't necessary, and that it's a natural consequence of capitalism that you have to have booms and busts. That is not true. You have booms for a special reason, and it's related to something very important that I've dealt with for a long time. The boom cycle is related to the Federal Reserve System, and that's why we have to address the Federal Reserve problem. We have to audit the Federal Reserve and deal with an alternative. For too long, the Federal Reserve had gotten credit for the booms, and they were never blamed for the busts. And then they would come along and they would do the same thing over again. The boom comes from too much spending and too much debt and too much printing press money, and it's an artificial boom. It's based on debt. But when the Fed would come in and re-inject even more money and spend more money, then the recessions would end rather quickly. But all that did was to re-inflate the bubble. It was only a temporary reprieve. And we've been doing that for 40 years. We have delinked our dollar from gold since 1971, and we have more or less been in a subtle financial bubble built on debt during all these years. That is the reason that we are in debt to the world, because the people in the world still trust us because we are very wealthy and we have a strong military, and our dollar used to be as good as gold, so they still, even today, take our dollar. But guess what it's turned us into? A nation of dependency. We depend on imports. Our jobs have left us. And the only thing we export really wholesale is our money. We export our dollars, so we buy goods and services, but guess what that does? It sends our jobs overseas. And we cannot sustain the obligations that we have for the elderly or for the sick because the income isn't strong enough. We don't have enough jobs here. But this is a consequence of a business cycle that really comes from the government. The government messes it up. It's not freedom that is at fault. It's the lack of freedom that is at its fault. You need economic growth, but you can't get growth until you correct mistakes. The main thing that we have to correct is getting rid of the mistakes, and that's called liquidation. Debt should be eliminated in order for growth to come back. Malinvestment, that means the mistakes that businessmen and investors make, if they're not productive, they have to be eliminated off the books. But what did we do when the crisis became very evident in 2008? That is when the housing bubble burst. So there was a lot of speculative activity going on, and the people on Wall Street and the banks invested in derivatives, and housing prices were way too high. People kept borrowing against their mortgages. And so when the crisis hit, which was predictable, this is not something that just popped out of thin air, it was a very predictable event. So the banks became very, very worried. The banks and the mortgage companies, the Fannie Mae's and the Freddie Mac, and they said, boy, you have to bail us out because there'll be a depression if you don't do it. The only thing they didn't tell you, if we had not bailed them out, they would have had the depression instead of the people getting the depression. There was a lot of bad debt on the books, and it couldn't be sold because they said it was the debt was illiquid. So those bonds and all couldn't be sold. Well, illiquid means that nobody wants them; they have no value. But guess what? We all own them now. Congress got involved, passed billions and billions of dollars of expenditures, even up to $1 trillion. The Federal Reserve got involved in passing out $15 trillion. They spent more money than the Congress spent. A third of what the Fed did went overseas to bail out foreign banks. We're over there preparing to bail out foreign banks in Europe now because they bought all this Greek debt. Now, are we compassionate in dealing with the Greek people and say we have to help the Greek people out? Don't ever believe it. The concern is, well, how are we going to bail out the banks of Europe? And we have made promises already to do that on a currency that's losing its value, and that is our problem. So how long can this go on? Not forever. It can go on for a little while longer, but we're at an impasse now, and this is why the markets know it. They know we're bankrupt, and they know that everything that's been offered in Washington so far has been more spending and more borrowing and more taxes and more regulations and more printing press money. That's how we got into the trouble. You can't correct the problem by doing the same thing over and over again, and that's why we need a new approach. The approach I talk about is not brand new in the sense that I'm inventing it, but it's something we had a taste of, but we understand how the markets work better now than ever before. But we had a taste of that. We've had the best taste in all of history, with the freest of markets and the most prosperous country in the history of the world. And yet, for the past 100 years, we have drifted a long way from that. We've lost confidence in ourselves. We have had too many people concerned about the redistribution of wealth by force rather than preserving. And now we've ended up with a weak economy, jobs overseas, a currency that's not working, and we now have a debt that is just overburdened to us. And what we have to do is say there is a much better way. Our problem, though, is that people don't want to hear the answer. And the answer is that you can't keep printing money. You can't keep running out debt. If you were in this kind of trouble as a person or a small business person, and you were in over your head with debt, and you wanted to get growth back again, and you're just working and working, and you can't pay the interest on the debt, well, you can't do it. You have to quit spending and pay down your debt. We now owe $3 trillion overseas. We've just been borrowing overseas. We've been living beyond our means. But we were sort of, allowed to do this because we were printing the reserve currency world. They still do take our dollars. So they take our dollars, sell us goods and services, and our standard of living stays up in a relative sense. It's all based on debt. It's like believing that if the banks just keep loaning you money or you get another credit card, what the heck, I'll just pay the interest with another credit card until you get too much debt. That is the problem that we're facing in this country today. There's just too much debt, and they won't admit it in Washington. They talk a little bit about it. You've heard the discussions, when it comes up to raising the debt limit and having and they can't deal with the problem, so they have a super Congress. 12 individuals that are going to solve a problem that Congress refuses to solve, and they're talking about cutting spending. But what are they talking about? They're talking about $1.5 trillion cuts. But they're not cuts. They have nothing to do with cuts. They're talking about cutting $1.5 trillion out of $10 billion worth of proposed increases. So the increases are only going to be $8.5 billion instead of $10 billion. And they're hysterical over all these cuts. The only budget that counts is this year's budget, so it has to be cut. But the problem is, politically, everybody thinks it should be cut, but nobody wants their budget cut, so nobody wants to suffer the consequences. Now, I have a few suggestions on how to do that, to get people in agreement on where to cut. Even though there's so many programs that have been developed around, over the last 100 years, that technically we shouldn't have done, and they're precarious, it's going to be hard to finance them, and technically they don't have the funds. Everything from Medicare to Social Security. But I don't believe it's right to pick on the people that we taught to be very dependent, whether it's child health care for the elderly, Social Security. But I believe there's room to cut where you can work your way out and let us work our way out of this mess and at least don't put people out in the street. But if we don't do that, what's going to happen is we're going to have runaway inflation. We're going to have the continual inflation where the government's going to send out the checks, but the money won't buy anything. And so everybody will suffer the consequences then. That's why it's important that we have cuts. Now my suggestion is very simply this, that we take care of our own. We take care of our people here at home, and we do a lot less. We spend a lot of time worrying about other people's borders. I visited when I was in the Air Force over on the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Matter of fact, went right up to the Khyber Pass. Very important area. All our problems over there now. And it's inconceivable how anybody can even live up there, let alone protect that border. We know where our borders are. Why aren't we more concerned about our own borders and the borders? Convinced of the American people have had enough of the wars going on. We are now involved in 6 conflicts. Some are bigger and some are smaller. But we're even getting involved in new ones without even permission from the Congress. We're going in now. We've gone into Libya under a UN resolution and under NATO. The Constitution doesn't permit that. I mean, we're supposed to only go to war with a declaration of war. In all these 6. Of all the wars we've been fighting since World War II, none have been declared. We essentially have not won any of them. So I think that it'd be a good idea that we have a stickler for a president and say, look, no wars unless they're declared, and then fight them and win them and get them over. We're spending about $1.5 trillion on all our foreign adventures. A lot of people get worried about it, and they say, oh, that means that you don't want to have a police force around the world. Right. I don't want to police the world. I want to be engaged in the world. I want to talk to people, trade with people, be friends with people, but I don't want to be involved, and I would have no intention as a president to go over and tell other people exactly what they have to do, because I don't believe in accepting. We should have a government, we shouldn't have a Congress or a president or a bureaucrat telling you what you should do with your own life or with your own property. That's yours as long as you're part of the people. Well, we're in way too many countries. We're in about 135 countries now. We have 900 bases. In Baghdad, we have just built recently an embassy. The embassy is almost as big as the Vatican. It's the biggest embassy in the world. It's cost over approximately $1 billion to build, and it's going to cost a lot more to maintain. The Congress just voted to employ 17,000 people for that embassy in Baghdad. Just think how much better that money should be spent here at home, not over in Baghdad. There are a lot of programs that I don't think we should have ever started. But you take something like dealing with natural emergencies, and we've engaged the federal government in this, and they're supposed to take care of them. The truth is, it's FEMA is about $19 billion in gap. But since we taught this dependency, does that mean we can just turn it off in a minute? We don't have to. What if we took and had the sense to say, look, when the $1 billion is appropriated for Baghdad to build an embassy, why don't we save that $1 billion, put $500 million toward the deficit, and spend $500 million back here on our own infrastructure? That would be a solution. spend much more in the military budget. And I'm careful to talk about military versus defense. People get nervous when I say I'd spend less on military. But just spending money on the military sometimes make us less safe because we're spending it on drones, bombing hundreds and hundreds of different cities and towns trying to kill our enemies. At the same time, a lot of innocent people get killed. And we wonder why they don't like us. I mean, I like to think about the golden rule with foreign policy. Think, well, you know, we're dropping all these bombs, we do make mistakes, they weren't intentional, innocent people died, but what in the world would we do if somebody did it to us? We wouldn't be all that happy about it. So I think that this idea that we're able to target every single person around the world, at the same time, instead of trying to stamp out and get rid of the people who hate us, the more people you kill, the more people are going to hate us. So, because they're not being that selective about it. I claim that we've had so far, in recent memory, only two options on our foreign policy. If you go to a dictator and tell him what we want him to do, if he does it, we give him money. But if the dictator says, no, get out of my life, we bomb him. So why don't we have another option? Why don't we neither bomb them or give them money? Why don't we just talk to them and try to trade with them or something? We do that. You say, well, they're dangerous people. Those people in the Middle East, they're dangerous. You can't talk to them, you can't trust them, and you don't want to ever deal with them. Guess what? We dealt with the Chinese when they had nuclear weapons and we were actually killing each other. We dealt with the Cold War. The Soviets had 30,000 nuclear weapons and intercontinental ballistic missiles. Even at the height of the Cold War, you know, we had Khrushchev in this country walking around, you know, yelling, screaming, I'll bury you and all this. But we didn't get hysterical and not continue to work our way out of the Cold War to the point where the failure of communism took care of the Soviets. I mean, their system failed. But today, I think we're afraid of our own shadow, and we think that right now there's a proposal now to expand the war in Pakistan, literally send troops into Pakistan, and also to start a war with Iran. We don't need another war. We need a lot less war, and we need to bring our troops home from this war. The troops, if they were brought home today, which a president could do without congressional approval because the president is in charge of the troops, let's just say we started coming home and bringing the troops home rather rapidly. All the money that they're making right now, you wouldn't put them out of work and, you know, right off the bat, they'd be still in the military, but they would be here spending their money instead of in Germany and Japan and South Korea and the Middle East. We have a Coast Guard that doesn't guard our coast. It's in the Persian Gulf. That's where a lot of the people serve in the Coast Guard. So, and the borders, of course, are better protected over there than over here. So a lot could be done. And I think that would be the easiest and the best political way to attack it, and rather than saying, oh, what we have to do is cut medical benefits to the poor. That's not going to work. And we can't do this. But that's still, even if we did a major change in cutting militarism, it wouldn't be enough. There'd still be a lot of debt. But you'd have to look at other things. If we as a people think that it's been a good idea to have the federal government run our public schools, then it might be a little bit hard to get rid of the Department of Education. But I don't think they do a good job. I think it's wasted money. I'd get rid of the Department of Education. I think the Department of Energy and a few others would be very difficult. We wouldn't miss them if they had to go. In fact, I think way too much money is spent on the TSA. I don't think we need any more. That whole thing, they've been poking and probing for a long time, but when it got bad about a couple of years ago, they were really doing a lot more poking and probing than they should be. I introduced legislation that very simply said this: a TSA agent can't do anything to a stranger that you or I can't do. I mean, not get arrested. You know, we just seem to be too complacent. They're supposed to have probable cause before they search us and molest us. So, but no, we've been so lackadaisical because we got frightened, and there's no probable cause, and so we give up our liberties too easily. This president has a new policy because there are some very bad people out there, and there are some people who would do us harm, and there's 3 in particular that happen to be American citizens. So he says, well, we don't know exactly where they are, but when we're seeing, we're going to assassinate them. But you say, well, that's okay because we know they're bad people. And even if you're pretty darn sure they're bad people, you don't want to do it that way. You don't protect the judicial system for the bad people. You protect the judicial system for all of us so we are never charged in that manner. You want the rule of law to exist. Respect for the law, we go to wars without declaration. But take the monetary issue. There have been some individuals who study the monetary issue and they know the Constitution that says only silver and gold can be legal tender. You're not allowed to print money, so and there's no authority for a central bank. So the whole system is technically unconstitutional. But some individuals say, well, look, what I'm going to do out in the open is I am going to use gold coins and silver coins as legal tender, and this is what I'm going to do. Not secret, not trying to hide or anything. They have been arrested by our federal agents and said that they were potential terrorists and counterfeiters. They used constitutional gold and silver, accused of being counterfeited, and then convicted and put in jail and have their goods confiscated to the tune of millions and millions of dollars of precious metals. But the true counterfeiters aren't out there minting a few prize gold coins. The true counterfeiters are the ones that the Federal Reserve subsidized and pushed by our U.S. Congress. The most important thing that we can do in trying to get our country in the right direction again is understanding the 3 basics. One is the basic understanding of what liberty is all about. And it has to come from an understanding that was given to us in our Declaration by Jefferson, that our life and our liberties come from our Creator. And they're inalienable. They can't be taken away. It comes in a natural way. It's not the government that gives us our liberty. But if you start with that, and if you have right to life, then all life should be precious, and we should protect all life. And then all liberty should be protected. Oh, does that mean that we have to put up with some people who have bad habits? Yeah, probably. Sometimes they do weird thing in the name of religion too, but we tolerate that. Sometimes they read weird books, and sometimes they read some very dangerous philosophies, but we don't close them down. But legalizing liberty means that people can run their life as they choose as long as they don't hurt other people. That protects homeschooling and our churches and our religious beliefs. At the same time, it does allow people to do things that you might not endorse. But legalizing something, allowing people to do things that they want on their own, even if you object to, doesn't mean that you endorse it. Because people read books that you don't want them to read, that doesn't mean you endorse what they read. For some people who practice a religion, you think, boy, that's a weird religion. That doesn't mean you endorse it. The same way with individuals' responsibility. But there has to be some strict rules. You don't hurt people. You don't defraud people. You fulfill your promises, and you don't mess with their property. And then you accept the undead. Now, if you want to change people, the most important thing when you want to change people is change yourself. And set an example. And work with your family, and your kids, and your neighbors, and through your church, and then set a good example. This is the most important thing. We should do that for the world. Some people believe that we are a nation that is very special, and we have this obligation to spread our witness around the world. Well, maybe we do. And I don't mind that. But I would work very hard in showing what our goodness is. It's freedom, it's prosperity, it's rule of law, it's sound money. And then when we do a very good job of it, maybe other people would look at it and say, you know, America is a great place. Let's be more like America. I think that's very good. threatening people and saying, if you do it our way, we'll give you a lot of money. If not, you're in big trouble. That doesn't work. So I think it's a much better way. We had the best introduction to the ideas of liberty. We had the greatest prosperity. I think nearly 100 years, but especially in the last 40 years, we've become very complacent. We have come from a hard-working nation that was a creditor nation. We loaned money and we sold goods and products overseas to a dependent nation. We're less productive. Our jobs go overseas. We mess up our economy. We have a bad currency system. We have an unhealthy foreign policy. So we have lost a lot. But I think what's happening today, the reason things are so different now than they were 4 years ago, is the American people know it too. American people know that this country is bankrupt. Something different has to be, something different has to happen. And I think that's what they're looking for. They're looking for something different, and they're looking for something good. They're looking for something that they can believe in and trust and understand. It isn't like I'm trying to invent something new. I haven't invented this. I am just so fortunate, personally I feel fortunate that I live in a country where my personal beliefs coincide with what the founders tried to give us in the Constitution. So we can start with that. So if we got into trouble by not obeying the Constitution, it just may be that sending only people to Washington as high regard and high respect for the Constitution would get us out of all this. But we have to believe in it. We have to have an understanding. We have to have an economic understanding. Because some people still believe that, if you don't have the government to take care of the poor, they'll be dying in the streets. But the history shows that the more government you have, the more people you have dying in the streets. And that's the problem. So if you want true prosperity, you have to have a faith and confidence in how the market works. So the humanitarian approach to a society, to me, is liberty. And it's humanitarian in the sense that not only does it honor and respect your individual rights to be the person you want to be, it also is the method whereby you have the greatest amount of production and prosperity. And yet we have allowed this to slip away. And now is a chance for us to do something about it. Because the one thing I am very confident about, I don't know exactly what the future is going to be. I made assessments at the time about mobiles and what would happen. But I don't know exactly what will happen. But I do know that if we don't do anything, or we allow this trend to continue, that you think the problems will be solved by more government, more spending, more regulation, more printing press money, more undermining your liberty, more TSA agents, more government bureaucrats. We have 100,000 federal bureaucrats that now enforce laws on us with guns. They have guns that come and threaten us and intimidate us. If you think that is it, I'll tell you what, we're in big trouble, because I know this country is going to be a lot worse off. I am very confident that if we just restored our confidence that things can be changed, that it can be turned around, and it doesn't have to be violent in any manner whatsoever. I'm encouraged because I have traveled a lot around the country, and our numbers are growing exponentially. We are especially getting tremendous endorsements on our university campuses. And we talk about a revolution in our organization and in our literature. Obviously, it's a nonviolent revolution. It's an intellectual revolution. But true intellectual revolutions are very frequently, grabbed hold of by young people, because they just seem to have a more energetic mind, and they grab hold of it. And this is why, when you see people revolting, even in China on Tiananmen Square, it was the young people that stood up and said, we want to throw off the chains. So this is where I see tremendous growth and enthusiasm, interest in the Federal Reserve, individual liberty and responsibility, not depending on the government, and a chance to opt out. Not just opting out of Obamacare, but opting out of so many of these government programs and opt in for the cause of liberty. That's what made America great. That's what we should be struggling for. If we do this, we can continue to make this a great country. Thank you.
have to exit in about 20 minutes, but we have some time for Q&A. We have a microphone here, so any questions you might have, we'd like to pass the mic to you so that you can hear the question, and everybody else can hear the question as well. We have one fellow right here in the front row. Right here we go.
Well, I'm a student.
Hold your mic up close.
Hello.
There you go.
In 2001, you supported a bill for Veterans Affairs, and which included dentists and stuff like that, and also chiropractic. And there's a couple of us from Palmer College of Chiropractic. We're just curious as far as like, what's your stance on chiropractic specifically, on alternative healthcare, and what's your idea for the healthcare at large? Should it be nonprofit, or what's your goal with this?
Okay, let me see if I can get this right. You were asking about chiropractic, and what was the second half of it?
And the second half would be healthcare in general.
Healthcare in general. Okay. Healthcare in general, I do know a little bit about that since I've been involved in the healthcare for a good many years, like having delivered about 4,000 babies as an obstetrician. No, I think the closer it is to home, the closer it is to markets, the better it is. The more government you have, the worse healthcare you get. But when it comes to, in my book called Liberty Defined, I have a chapter on medical care, and I want to legalize really freedom of choices. So that means that I have a healthy skepticism of the licensure business. Licensing isn't really protecting the people like they think it should protect. But I want people to make their own choices on all alternative care. But when it comes to nutritional substances and vitamins and all, there's always a special interest that want to regulate it. It's usually the drug companies who make it more difficult. And sometimes, different levels of medical care, they want to exclude certain individuals, chiropractors and others, through the licensing procedure. So people should have freedom of choice. People who offer services cannot be fraud and lie and say, look, I have this perfect cure for cancer, and it's an outright lie. So you can't do that. You want as much freedom of choice as possible. Now, I can't go into total detail on the medical care, but I much more favor, the change in the tax code right now for people who would want to opt out of the system and get their money back on tax credits. And that individuals would pay their smaller bills. They have major medical insurance to take care of the big bills. This would at least get people away from total government control. So the worst part about Obamacare was the mandate that everybody had to participate in it. And I want people to have choices. And that is the basic principle that I would apply to medicine, like I apply to all other economic matters. It's freedom of choice and not excluding people through regulations or licensing.
Okay, another question.
My question is regarding energy.
No, closer to the...
Okay. My question is regarding energy. What action should be taken? It seems like this is going to be awfully important in our economy and the well-being of our country. And could you also speak about the Keystone pipeline? Can you explain that to us, please?
Okay, I heard about energy.
Yes.
Talk about energy. What was the last one?
Keystone pipeline
Oh, the Keystone, is that the one in the Northeast? Or?
brings the oil down to Canada.
Yeah, in the Northeast. Yeah. Okay, on energy, I want the market to deliver our energy. I do not want any one group of producers of energy to be subsidized and not another one. I do not call tax credit subsidies. If you're going to give tax credits for certain forms of energy, you should give it to everybody equally. The market should sort it out and find out which is the cheapest and most efficient. If there's pollution involved, nobody has the right to pollute. But unfortunately, we have not had real free markets in energy. But I don't believe that we have to be the goal. I don't think should have to be absolute independence. Some people think that has to be the only goal. But if you have free markets, and if the price, let's say there is a shortage of oil, we can't get the oil out of the Middle East, I don't think it would take us that long to come up with an alternative. I mean, we're smart enough to deal with that. But you have to have free entry, you have to have minimum regulations, you have to have low taxation, and you just have to allow the market to work to find out which is the best energy at the best price. So it's the market that deals with that. Now, as far as a pipeline goes, the only time the federal government would be involved in maybe through the regulations of Canada to the United States. But once again, it should be worked out with contracts. It should be if people don't want to sell their land to have a pipeline on it, and the government comes along with eminent domain and takes it and forces you to give up land. Eminent domain is permissible under circumstances, but it shouldn't be used carelessly and generously and doing things that the people don't like. So the people can speak out on this about objecting to it. We have a river down near where I live, and they were, one of the chemical companies was going to come and put, and this was a recreation river, and one chemical company was going to put about 25 barges a day up and down that river. Well, the people spoke out, and I think properly so, and they objected to it, so it was a true objection to it. So I don't know enough to say that's a great idea or a bad idea, but I think if you respect property rights and allow competition to exist, you'll find out if that's a good idea or not. But the property owner should have most to say about whether there's a pipeline. Okay.
That's it. I have two more questions. One right here. There's one on the front row. Oh, there's one in the back. We'll see if we can get a couple.
Yeah,
Get a quick
the
one.
problem with Congress, I don't understand how they can not protect American jobs when they're talking job all the time. When, like this solar company that we loaned $500 million to build these with American wages, and they allow China to ship the same panel in and sell in the USA for half the price. So no wonder this company went bankrupt. And the same thing down in Houston, Texas, they've got acres and acres and acres of pipeline. This lady's talking about pipeline, and this pipeline is coming from China, and it's not even sold, and it's just sitting there on the docks waiting for somebody to buy it. And our steel industry has gone to hell because it seems like Congress could do something to increase the tariff on these items that are coming into the country, and it would create more jobs. And they just sit there and talk about jobs and don't do anything.
Well, when it comes to your first point was not the pipeline. What was it?
The solar company.
The solar. Oh, yeah, that's an outrage. That's a typical example when you invite the government in to do things through special regulations or special privileges. You end up doing this. There should be none of that. Period.
But they didn't know that China was shipping those to the USA for half the price that they were making them.
Well, I'm going to be more careful on how I answer that because I like trade, and it isn't that isn't the problem. Our jobs go overseas. We chase our jobs away because of our currency problems, over-regulation, over-taxation, and the various other things. We chase jobs away. We tax capital from it coming in here. But I look at this as a personal liberty issue. If you think of it not in pipes or whatever, I'm not quite aware of this pipeline in Texas. That I'm not positive what that is all about. But if you decided that, well, I don't like cheap shoes coming in here, and shoes only cost $10 if you import them, but they cost $100 if you insist that they're made in the United States. Well, then you say, well, let's put a tariff on and make people buy in the United States. Well, then you're penalizing poor people. You're saying it's a tax on poor people. They have to pay the tax. All tariffs are taxes. And right now, the most dangerous thing going on in the world today is a trade war coming up. Because if you don't look at the basics of why we're in trouble and correct the problems, the next step is trade wars. China, their greatest contribution to it is the rigging of their currency. And but sound currency would help solve that problem. But trade war, just this last week, Brazil, because they had the same kind of complaint and concern, Brazil put a 30% tax on all imports from China and from Korea. That's going to hurt their people. That means the people who are, that their prices are going to go up. And that's a tax on the people. So that, and what will happen? China's going to retaliate. And it goes back and forth. This is what we did in the Depression. We'd be very careful about endorsing the idea of tariffs. But I'm concerned exactly as you are because of the problem, but I think it's foolish policy otherwise that causes that. Certainly subsidizing, and I mean, how did Solyndra, how did that help our people? It didn't help us at all. We need that money out of the hands of the government and into our economy so that we can compete better. So it's so much of government involvement and regulations that makes us less competitive.
We'll have a little bit of handshaking before we exit. One final question, please.
First and foremost, I'd like to say it's an honor to hear you speak, sir. My question is also in regards to this plan. I was wondering what you felt the status of the repeal of the antitrust exemption in the McCarran-Ferguson Act is, and what exactly you would supplement or eliminate as president to fix this loophole in the healthcare system.
I didn't catch that. Can you repeat that? The essence of the question, what agency?
It's the repeal of the Antitrust Exemption Act to the McCarran-Ferguson Act. It's the loophole that involves our healthcare system. I was wondering what you would eliminate to supplement the repeal on this.
On medical care, antitrust laws with medical care?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, because I have advocated this. The insurance companies and the management companies are not, they're exempt from antitrust laws, but doctors are not. So if doctors want to negotiate, and I don't even like the system of medicine, I don't like managed care and all this stuff they do. But if doctors have to, you can't make the arrangement with doctor and patient anymore, so you have to go to these management company, insurance company. They're not protected because they don't have to live up to the antitrust law. We do. So if there are 6 OB doctors in town and I talk to them, I can get sent to prison. So no, I want that to be freed up, and I want to be able to negotiate. But the thing that I indicated earlier is, again, medical savings account would get back to where the patient would come to me and we would talk about it. And when I was in medicine early on, we didn't have government medicine. And I'm absolutely convinced that during that period of time, the patient was always charged the least. And I worked in charity hospitals, they weren't charged anything if they didn't have money. But today, because of everybody's third-party payment, the patient doesn't worry that much about it. The government's going to pay for it. Nobody worries about it. Now, everybody gets charged the maximum. And if you're not on it, you get sent down to the office to sign up for Medicare or Medicaid, because the labs will charge the most, the doctors charge the most. So it's exactly opposite. So managed care by government is really the culprit, and the antitrust law is a hindrance to us. Thank you.
Okay. Left. We do have time for just a little bit of handshaking, so if you start a line over here and work that direction and come in this direction here, and we have an opportunity for a few handshakes.
I'll take care of this.
Jimmy, just stop, okay?
God bless you, Dr. Paul.
Good to see you. Hello there. How are you?
January 20th is my birthday. I want to celebrate it at your house.
Exit that way. Exit right out the door.
Okay, which way? You want to
right here, go this way.
Oh, okay.
This way.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for coming. Good to meet you. There you go. I like that. That's a hook course.
been the guys that
Yeah,
come?
he's about 4 or 5 guys here.
Nice. They got a good rugby squad there. That's the only way I know about it.
How you doing?
Doing well.
Yeah,
We'll see
good,
you
good
guys-
job in innings, yeah.
Oh, thanks.
You too, man. You too,
Jimmy, who should I vote for president?
I'm Paul.
Again.
I'm Paul.
Again.
Paul.
All right.